I can still smell the perfume she wore that night, vanilla, sweet, expensive, the kind you only wear when you want to be unforgettable. I remember standing there, frozen, watching her laugh against his shoulder. My boyfriend, my best friend, the two people I trusted most in this world, and they were kissing. Not just some guilty, impulsive kiss. No, it was the kind of kiss that had history. The kind that told me it wasn't their first time. I should have screamed. Thrown something. Made a scene, but I didn't. I just stood there, my throat burning, my fingers digging into my palms until I felt the sting of my own nails. Because the worst part wasn't the betrayal. It was that they didn't even see me. I wasn't invisible that night. I was erased. He pulled away first. And when his eyes finally met mine across the room, I saw it. That flicker of panic. Then guilt. Then relief. As if being caught was easier than pretending. Wait, he started, stepping forward. But I was already gone. The sound of my heels echoed through the hallway like a countdown. Every step heavier than the last. My heart was screaming, run, but my body moved like it was underwater. Outside, the rain had started, one of those cold, biting rains that feels almost personal. I remember looking up, mascara mixing with rainwater, thinking, is this really happening? I wish I could say that was the moment I decided to change everything. But it wasn't. That night, I broke. I went home, ripped off the dress I'd worn for him, and stared at myself in the mirror. The girl staring back looked like a ghost, eyes red, lips trembling. Pathetic. I kept hearing her laugh in my head. My best friend. The one who promised she'd always have my back. Her name was Mara. And the guy? Elias. The kind of man who made you believe in forever, until forever ran out. The next morning, I woke up to a message from him. One line. We didn't mean for you to find out like that made it better. I didn't reply. Not that day. Not for weeks. I deleted every photo, every text, every piece of evidence that he ever existed in my life. But no matter how much I erased, they lingered. In songs, in smells, in the way my phone lit up with no reason at all. Everyone at work eventually found out. Someone had filmed the confrontation at the party. Of course they had. I became the punchline of the week. The girl who got replaced by her own best friend, and yet, something inside me shifted. I stopped crying one night halfway through a breakdown. Just stopped. Because suddenly, the pain turned into something colder, sharper, a strange calm that scared me more than the heartbreak. I started remembering things, little details I'd ignored. The late-night calls she took in the other room. The way he'd flinch whenever I mentioned her name. The lies I told myself just to keep believing in them. Maybe I'd always known. Maybe I'd just been too afraid to look. But now I was wide awake. And for the first time in months, I wasn't scared anymore. One night I opened her Instagram. Their photos were everywhere, smiling, glowing, unbothered. The captions read like mockery. Sometimes love finds you in unexpected places. Unexpected places. Like the arms of my boyfriend, apparently. I could have blocked them. But I didn't. I watched. I studied. Every post, every move, every word. Because if they wanted to make me a ghost, then I'd become the kind that haunts. And that's when the idea began. Small at first, fragile like a spark in a storm. But it grew into something I couldn't ignore, a plan, a transformation, a way to become everything they thought I'd never be. They wanted me gone. So I decided to become unforgettable. And if you're wondering what I did next, well, let's just say, it started with a single message. Hey Mara, we should talk. What do you think that message said? Because trust me, it wasn't an apology. My thumb hovered over the screen for almost an hour before I hit send. Hey Mara, we should talk. I didn't even know what I meant by that. Maybe I wanted closure. Maybe I wanted to hurt her. Or maybe, deep down, I just wanted her to look me in the eye and realize what she'd done. She replied 10 minutes later. Of course she did. Yeah, I've been wanting to talk too. I almost laughed. Wanting to talk? That's what you say when you're about to justify something unforgivable. We met at a small cafe on 5th Street. The kind we used to go to every Friday after class. I picked it on purpose. Familiarity has a way of twisting the knife. She walked in like she hadn't done anything wrong. Hair perfect. That same vanilla perfume filling the air again. The scent that used to remind me of safety. Now it smelled like poison. "Hey," she said, forcing a smile. "You look good." I didn't. I knew I didn't. But I still said, "Thanks." We sat across from each other, and for a moment, neither of us spoke. The silence between us was louder than the coffee grinder screaming behind the counter. Finally, she said it. "I didn't mean for things to happen this way." I tilted my head, pretending to listen. "Then how did they happen, Mara?" She sighed. "It wasn't planned. Elias and I just connected. After you two started fighting all the time, he came to me for advice and you comforted him," I finished for her. Her eyes softened like she wanted me to understand. I almost laughed again. "You think this is something I can understand?" I asked. "I'm sorry," she whispered. "I never wanted to hurt you." Funny, because she didn't look hurt. She looked happy. For a moment, I thought about throwing my coffee in her face. But instead, I smiled. A slow, steady, unsettling kind of smile. "It's fine," I said. Her brows lifted, cautious. "Really?" "Yeah, I mean, if it was meant to happen, who am I to fight it?" The relief that washed over her face was almost insulting. She reached out to touch my hand, like she thought we could go back to being friends. I let her. Because I needed her to believe it. That's how it started. After that day, I played my part. I was kind, forgiving, supportive even. I liked her posts again. Commented little hearts under their photos. Sent her memes like old times, and slowly she started trusting me again. It was almost pathetic how easy it was. Meanwhile, I watched, listened, took notes. Elias had moved in with her by then, a cozy little apartment uptown. She'd tell me all about it on our catch-up calls. How happy they were. How much calmer he was with her. How different. That word stuck to my ribs like glass. Every night I'd replay their conversations in my head. Their laughter. Their plans. And every night I'd whisper to my reflection, they don't know who they're dealing with. Because while they were busy living their perfect little life, I was becoming someone else. I started small. New haircut. New wardrobe. I stopped dressing like someone who wanted to blend in. I wanted to be seen. Then came the gym. The late nights. The quiet mornings. Every bruise, every sore muscle, I counted as progress. Pain was currency. And I was rich in it. By month 3, even my own coworkers barely recognized me. But the best part wasn't the way I looked. It was the way people looked at me. Power does something to your posture. Your voice. Your presence, and Mara noticed. "Oh my God, you look amazing," she said one night over dinner. I just smiled. "Thanks, I've been working on myself," she laughed. "Well, whatever you're doing, it's working." If only she knew what I was really working on. Because while she was busy bragging about her new apartment, I was collecting pieces of their world, the people they hung out with, the bars they went to, the stories they didn't post online, and I discovered something. Elias wasn't as happy as she thought. I saw it in the way his smile dimmed when she wasn't looking. The way he'd still check my old photos. Yes, I saw the views. He missed me. He just didn't realize it yet. So I decided to remind him. I showed up at one of their parties. Invited, of course, because Mara thought we were friends again. And when Elias saw me walk in, his expression told me everything I needed to know. He still felt it. That night, I made sure he did. What did I do to make him remember me? Let's just say, sometimes revenge doesn't start with fire. It starts with a smile. I didn't plan to stand out that night. But when I walked into Mara's apartment, every head turned. The music was loud, that lazy kind of electronic hum that fills the air like static. And the place smelled like wine, perfume, and pretension. I wore black, simple, clean, Deadly. Mara ran up to me, grinning, a little too wide. "You came." I smiled back. "You invited me." She giggled, that nervous little sound she made when she didn't know what to say. Elias was by the window, talking to a group of people. When his eyes found me, everything in him froze. I saw it in the small, almost imperceptible twitch in his jaw. Recognition, regret, desire, and for the first time in a long time, I felt powerful. I didn't look away, didn't flinch, just smiled. That same smile I'd practiced in the mirror for weeks. Controlled, alluring, untouchable. He excused himself from the group and crossed the room toward us. "Hey," he said, voice low. "Didn't expect to see you here." I tilted my head. "Guess I'm full of surprises." Mara looped her arm through his. "Isn't it great she came?" "I told you we're all good now." I laughed softly. "Yeah, all good. But my eyes said something else." He saw it. For the next hour, I played the part. Friendly, funny, detached. But every so often, I'd catch his gaze lingering on me. And when it did, I'd let him look. Let him remember. Halfway through the night, Mara disappeared to grab more drinks. And that's when he came over. "You've changed," he said. "Is that a bad thing?" "No." He paused. "It's different. You seem stronger." I took a slow sip of my wine. "Guess heartbreak's a good workout." He winced. "You don't have to keep doing that." "Doing what?" "Acting like you're fine," I smiled. "Who says I'm acting?" He looked away, and for a moment I saw something flicker in him. Guilt, maybe. Or longing. Either way, it was enough, because I wasn't trying to win him back. I was trying to make him wonder what he'd lost. When Mara returned, we all laughed like old times. On the surface, it was harmless. But every joke I made landed just a little too close. Every glance was timed perfectly. And by the end of the night, she couldn't stop watching us. I could feel it, her unease. Like a crack forming in porcelain, small, but enough. The next day, she texted me. "Did you and Elias talk a lot last night?" "Lol, you two were so funny together." I stared at that lol for a long time. It wasn't a laugh. It was a question disguised as a joke. I replied, "Yeah, we were just catching up." It felt nice I didn't add a smiley face. She'd noticed that. That's how manipulation works. Not through lies, but through absences. Through the things you don't say. Days passed. Then weeks. We started hanging out again, the three of us. Dinner, drinks, group chats. They thought it was friendship. I knew it was groundwork. Every time Elias talked, I listened. Every time Mara bragged, I smiled. And slowly, I started feeding them little pieces of truth wrapped in innocence. "Elias, remember when we used to go to that rooftop bar? You should take Mara sometime. The view's amazing." "Oh, you told Mara about that?" "I thought you would have already." A pause, a look. A fracture. By month 6, I knew their routine better than they did. The nights they fought. The things she said that made him go quiet. The parts of him she didn't understand. But I did. Sometimes I'd catch my reflection while leaving their apartment and almost scare myself. Because I didn't look like me anymore. I looked like the version of me that pain had sculpted. Sharper, quieter, dangerous. And yet, there were moments when I wondered if I'd gone too far. Like when Mara hugged me one night, whispering, "I'm so glad we're okay now." And for a second, I almost felt sorry for her. Almost. But then I'd remember the kiss. The betrayal. The way she laughed while I broke, and mercy turned to steel. One night, after another one of their stupid arguments, I got a message from Elias. "Can we talk?" I stared at the screen, pulse racing. It was happening. The first real crack. "Of course," I replied. "Same place as before?" He didn't ask what I meant. He remembered. He wanted to talk. But this time, I wasn't the one who'd be crying by the end of it. He was already there when I walked in. Same booth, same corner, same dim yellow light flickering above the table like it was still trying to survive. That place used to be ours. The tiny cafe on Maple Street where we'd spend hours talking about everything and nothing. Now it felt like a graveyard of ghosts. Elias looked up when I approached. For a moment, he didn't move. Just stared, like he was seeing something he didn't quite recognize. "Hey," I said softly. He exhaled. "You look different." I've been hearing that a lot lately. We sat in silence for a few seconds. The kind that doesn't feel empty, just heavy. He ordered coffee. I didn't. I was already shaking, though I didn't know if it was anger or adrenaline. Finally, he spoke. "I know this is weird," he said. "Me asking to meet? But I can't stop thinking about everything." I tilted my head. "Everything like what?" "Like us," he said quietly. "Like how things ended." I wanted to laugh. Instead, I just stared at him. The man who'd once sworn I was his forever, sitting across from me like a stranger trying to remember my name. "You moved on pretty fast," I said. He sighed. "It wasn't like that. She was there when things got hard." "When you made them hard, you mean?" He flinched. "Good." I leaned forward. "You think about me, Elias?" He hesitated. "Yeah, how often?" He looked down. "More than I should." That answer shouldn't have made my chest tighten. But it did. He kept talking about how guilty he felt, how confused he was, how he didn't mean to hurt me. I listened. Every word was a confession disguised as closure, and I let him believe I was giving him forgiveness, because that's what he needed to feel safe. When he said my name, soft, broken, I felt something shift. That familiar ache, buried under months of rage, cracked open again. Part of me wanted to reach across the table, to touch his hand, to remind myself that once, this same hand used to trace the outline of my spine like it was a prayer. But the other part of me, the stronger part, remembered her, the image of Mara's lips on his. The laughter, the betrayal, and the softness in me turned to stone. "I forgive you," I said finally. His eyes widened a little, surprised. "You do?" "Yeah, we were both stupid. But we've grown, right?" He nodded, relief washing over his face. And that's when I leaned back and smiled. Not with warmth, but control. Because forgiveness isn't always mercy. Sometimes it's bait. We talked for another hour. He laughed at my jokes again. Told me how different I seemed. And I let him see just enough vulnerability to make him believe I'd healed. When we stood to leave, he hesitated. "Can I hug you?" he asked. I should have said no. But instead, I stepped into his arms. It was strange. How familiar it felt. How right, how wrong. He smelled the same. That warm cedar scent that once meant comfort. Now it just burned. His hand brushed against my hair as he whispered, "I'm sorry." I pulled back and looked up at him. "Then prove it," I said. He frowned. "What do you mean?" "Be better to her than you were to me." His expression faltered, like he didn't know if I was serious or accusing him. And that uncertainty was everything I wanted. I left before he could say another word. Walked straight into the cold night air, my pulse thundering in my throat. I'd done it. He was hooked again, not with love, but with guilt. That was the first step. Because guilt always cracks before love does. And once it does, everything else falls apart. Over the next few weeks, I started hearing things. From mutual friends. From whispers online. Mara and Elias had been fighting. A lot. Apparently, he'd been distant, forgetful, distracted, and she'd noticed. One night, she sent me a message. "Hey, has Elias seemed off to you lately?" I stared at the text, my reflection glowing faintly on the screen. Then I smiled. "Yeah," I typed back. "Maybe he's just tired. You know how he gets when he's overwhelmed." A perfect answer. Harmless, comforting, and loaded with poison. That was the thing about revenge. You didn't have to destroy someone's world in one explosion. You just had to light enough candles around them and wait for the wax to catch fire. The cracks were spreading. But I didn't realize until later, I wasn't just breaking them. I was breaking myself. Rumors travel fast, but guilt travels faster. By the end of that month, I could feel it in the air around them. Thick, charged, ready to ignite. They tried to hide it, of course, the curated smiles on social media, the couple selfies with forced captions. But once you've seen cracks in glass, you can't unsee them. I told myself it was working, that every argument they had, every long silence between them, was proof I was in control. But control has a funny way of slipping through your fingers just when you start to enjoy the weight of it. I'd catch myself checking her stories at 3 a.m, not to see them, but to see if he'd stopped appearing. When he did, my heart raced. When he didn't, I hated myself for caring. One night, Mara called. Her voice was small. Tired. Can I ask you something? Of course. Do you ever think Elias still thinks about you? The question hit harder than I expected. I hesitated, then said, Why? She sighed. He's been distant lately. Quiet. It feels like he's somewhere else. I bit back a smile. Maybe he's just stressed. Yeah, she said softly. Maybe. But I could hear the doubt in her voice, and that doubt was my masterpiece. When the call ended, I sat in the dark staring at my reflection in the black mirror of my phone. I should have felt satisfied, victorious. But instead, there was this emptiness, a hollow ache that no amount of revenge could fill, because in making them miserable, I'd made myself a ghost again. Only this time, I'd done it willingly. I started avoiding people. Work felt mechanical. Sleep became a luxury I couldn't afford. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw that night, their kiss replaying in slow motion until it blurred into static. Then one afternoon, something strange happened. I ran into Elias downtown. He looked wrecked, the confident, put-together man I used to know replaced by someone sleep-deprived and unsure. Hey, he said, forcing a smile. It's been a while. I nodded. You look tired. Yeah, things have been rough. With Mara? He hesitated, then laughed bitterly. You could say that. He told me they'd been arguing nonstop, that she didn't trust him lately, that he didn't even know why. I knew why. But I stayed quiet. He rubbed his temples. Sometimes I think she sees something that isn't there. Maybe she does, I said softly. He looked at me, confused. What's that supposed to mean? Maybe she sees who you used to be. That shut him up. I left before he could respond. Walking away, my heart pounded with adrenaline, the intoxicating kind that makes you feel both powerful and poisoned. I'd wanted him to hurt, and he did. But I also saw the exhaustion in his eyes, the same exhaustion I'd been carrying. Revenge isn't just fire, it's smoke. It gets into your lungs, your skin, your thoughts, until you can't remember what clean air felt like. The next few days, Mara's texts became more erratic, half apologies, half accusations. Did you talk to Elias? He said he saw you. I feel like you're hiding something. I stared at her messages, fingers trembling over the keyboard. I could have lied again. I could have sent another careful poisoned truth. But for the first time I hesitated, because somewhere beneath all the anger, I remembered who she used to be. The nights we stayed up talking about everything we wanted, the stupid dreams we shared, the way she once cried in my arms over a guy who broke her heart. And it hit me. I wasn't just taking revenge on my ex or my ex-best friend. I was taking revenge on the version of me who used to believe in them. The version who was innocent. That night, I went out alone. No makeup, no armor, just me and the echo of what I'd become. I ended up at the pier, the one Elias used to take me to when life felt too heavy. The wind was cold, sharp against my skin. The city lights shimmered on the water like tiny lies pretending to be stars. I whispered to the waves, "Is it enough yet?" No answer, just the sound of the tide pulling everything away. My phone buzzed in my pocket. A new message. From Mara. "We need to talk, please. I stared at it for a long time, the screen lighting up my face. For a second, I thought about ignoring it, letting her drown in her own confusion. But something in her tone, that crack of desperation, pulled at me. Maybe she knew. Maybe she'd finally figured out what I'd done. Either way, I had to see it through. I texted back, "Tomorrow. Same cafe. Noon." And when I hit send, I realized, this time, I didn't know if I was walking into a confrontation or a confession. Tomorrow, I'd face her, the girl who betrayed me, the friend I'd turned into an enemy. But the real question was, when she looked at me, would she even recognize who I'd become? I didn't recognize myself anymore, and that was the point. Every morning, I'd wake up before the sun rose, run until my lungs burned, and stare at my reflection like I was studying a stranger. The girl who used to cry in the shower was gone. The girl who apologized for taking up space was dead. In her place stood someone sharp, calculated, beautiful in a way that made people second-guess their worth. It started small, a haircut. I remember sitting in that salon chair, watching long pieces of my past fall to the floor. The stylist asked, "Are you sure about this?" I smiled, that strange, cold smile I'd been practicing. Positive. When I looked in the mirror afterward, I swear I saw his face flash across my mind. The look he'd make when he'd tell me I wasn't adventurous enough, not spontaneous like Maya. So I became the version of myself they would have never seen coming. I got a new job, started showing up places I'd been too nervous to before. People started noticing me, whispering, turning their heads. It wasn't vanity, it was survival. Every like on my posts, every double take in a crowd, it was a quiet scream to the universe. See me now. But somewhere deep inside, I was still angry. Not just at him, not just at her, at myself for letting them make me feel small. So when the opportunity came, I didn't resist it. It was at a charity gala, the kind of event Maya used to brag about being invited to. I'd been working behind the scenes for weeks, helping with PR. The guest list came across my desk one afternoon, and there it was. His name, right next to hers. My chest tightened, not from pain, but from something darker, something electric. I spent the next 2 weeks preparing, not for them, for me. The night of the gala, I wore a black satin dress that looked like sin stitched into fabric. Every detail was deliberate, the smoky eyes, the low back, the diamond clasp on my throat. A statement, a declaration. When I entered, heads turned. The music faltered for just a moment, that hush that happens when energy shifts in a room. And then, I saw them. He froze first. She followed his gaze and nearly choked on her drink. I could almost hear her thoughts racing. Is that her? I walked past them without a word, the faintest curve of a smile playing on my lips. It wasn't about pretending I didn't care. It was about proving I didn't need to. But that's the thing about control. It's fragile. It cracks under the weight of memory. Later that night, he found me near the balcony. "Hey," he said softly, like the words still had meaning between us. I turned, meeting his eyes. He looked smaller somehow. "Wow, you look different?" I cut him off. "Yeah, amazing." I laughed, and it wasn't the warm sound he remembered. "Guess people change." There was a silence, thick, uneasy. "I didn't expect to see you here," he said. "You never did expect much from me, did you?" His jaw tightened. Maya was across the room watching us like a hawk. I could feel her insecurity radiating from a distance, and for a moment, I almost felt pity. Almost. Then he said something that made my blood run cold. "I miss who you used to be." That's when I realized He didn't miss me. He missed the version of me that made him feel powerful, the one who needed his validation to breathe. I leaned in close, just enough that he could feel the heat of my words. "She's gone," I whispered. "You killed her." Then I turned and walked away. Outside, the night air was sharp against my skin. I felt it, a strange mix of victory and emptiness. Because revenge, even quiet revenge, never fills the void. It just feeds it. And yet, as I drove home that night, something in me shifted. The girl in the mirror had finally met her reflection, and neither of us flinched. But what I didn't know, what none of them knew, was that this was only the first act. Because the real reckoning hadn't even begun. You'd think seeing them crumble a little would feel satisfying. You'd think watching his face fall, seeing her eyes flicker with fear, that would be enough. But it wasn't. It never is. Because once you taste that power, even for a second, it's like a drug. And I wanted more. The night after the gala, I couldn't sleep. I replayed everything. His tone, her glance, the way she held onto his arm just a little tighter after I walked away. Something about it didn't add up. There was guilt in her eyes. Not the kind of guilt you feel when you steal someone's boyfriend. Deeper. Heavier. I told myself I didn't care. But curiosity is a slow, quiet poison. And mine was already seeping through every thought, so I started digging. Not in a dramatic movie-style way. Just subtle. A friend here. A contact there. A few messages sent under the guise of professional follow-ups. And then one night, I found it, the first crack in their perfect facade. A mutual acquaintance, someone who used to work with Maya, messaged me. "Hey, you might not want to know this, but there's something weird about how she met him." My pulse thudded. I told her to continue. Apparently, Maya had orchestrated their chance meeting. The coffee shop run-in, the shared joke, the fake spilled latte. Every detail she'd described to me back then as fate had been planned. Meticulously, she'd known he was my boyfriend. She'd studied everything about him, his habits, his preferences, even the way he liked his coffee. It wasn't love. It was a performance, and I'd been the audience. I remember staring at my screen, the room spinning around me. A sharp, metallic taste filled my mouth. I wasn't sure if it was rage or heartbreak, probably both. All those nights I'd cried, wondering what I did wrong. All those months I'd blamed myself. And the truth was, I'd been a pawn in her little game. I laughed. It wasn't a pretty laugh. It was hollow. Ugly. The sound of something inside me cracking open. I should have walked away. Blocked them both. Healed in peace, but no. I decided if Maya wanted to play games, I'd show her how it felt to lose control. I started posting again. Not random selfies, but strategic glimpses. Photos that told stories without saying names. A watch that looked suspiciously like his. A perfume bottle she used to rave about. A caption that read, "Funny how karma never forgets." Within days, she took the bait. She unblocked me. Started watching my stories again. And then, she slipped up. Late one night, I got a message from an unknown number. "You think you're better than me now?" No greeting, no name. But I knew that venom. I'd heard it in her voice before, when she'd pretended to comfort me after my first breakup. When she'd accidentally worn the same dress to my birthday. I typed back, "You tell me." She didn't reply. But the next morning, her perfect online persona started to crumble. Posts deleted. Comments turned off. Whispers started circulating, about her, about him, and I just watched. Silent. Unmoved. But behind all that, a strange unease began to grow. Because revenge had made me powerful, but it had also made me paranoid. Every time my phone buzzed, I expected another message. Every time I looked in the mirror, I saw shadows under my eyes that hadn't been there before. It's funny. You think destroying them will make you feel free. But the truth is, when you burn people, the smoke clings to you too. One night, I was out with friends, laughing, pretending everything was normal, when I saw her. Maya. She looked nothing like the confident girl I remembered. Her skin was pale, her eyes wild, her smile trembling. And when our eyes met across the room, she mouthed something I'll never forget. "Please, stop." I froze. For a second, I wasn't the Avenger. I was the monster. She turned and ran out before I could react. And something in my chest, that dark, satisfied thing, began to twist. Because if she was begging me to stop, what exactly had she lost? What had I started that I didn't understand? That night, as I drove home, my phone buzzed again. Unknown number. One message. "You don't know the whole story." My hands trembled. Because this time, it wasn't from her. That message sat on my screen like a live wire. "You don't know the whole story. No name. No context." Just those 6 words glowing white in the dark. For a long moment, I just stared. I could hear my heartbeat echoing in my ears, each thud louder than the last. I wanted to delete it, pretend it didn't exist. But curiosity has teeth, and mine sank deep. I typed back one word. "Who?" No reply. Minutes crawled into hours. The room felt smaller, my phone heavier. Outside, rain pressed against my window like a whisper I couldn't understand. I told myself I didn't care, that I'd done what I needed to do. But that message kept repeating in my head like an itch I couldn't scratch. By morning, I gave in. I opened a new thread and scrolled through every old message I'd ever had with him. Our first texts. The late-night confessions. The slow decay. Nothing explained why someone would warn me now. Then I saw something strange. A photo, a year old. I'd almost forgotten it existed. It was taken the night everything changed. The night Maya first accidentally met him. But in the corner of the frame, barely visible in the reflection of a glass window, there was someone else, someone I knew. I zoomed in until the pixels blurred, but there was no mistaking it. My boss. The one who'd hired me at my current job, the same one who'd introduced me to that gala. I felt a chill crawl up my spine. Why was he there? Why that night? And then, like a domino tipping, the pieces started to fall. He'd been friends with Maya long before I met her. He'd once mentioned knowing a couple who went through something messy. He'd been oddly interested in my breakup when I first started working for him. It couldn't be coincidence, so I did something reckless. I waited until late evening, then drove to the office. No one was there. Just the quiet hum of the city through the glass walls. I logged into the PR system. Technically, I still had admin access. And what I found made my stomach twist. Emails, dozens of them. Between him and Maya, they weren't just personal. They were plans, campaign proposals, image control, timeline coordination. He'd been helping her manage the story of their relationship, coaching her on public sympathy. And one subject line stopped my breath entirely. After the break, contain her. I opened it. The message was dated 2 weeks after my breakup. Inside were screenshots of my private posts. Things I'd deleted, things no one else could have seen. He'd sent her advice on how to frame herself as the victim, how to redirect online focus from the girlfriend to the love story. And at the bottom, one line in bold. "She's emotional." Use that. I felt my throat tighten. The room spun. It wasn't just betrayal. It was orchestration. They hadn't just taken him from me. They'd built a narrative around my pain, turned my humiliation into a brand. My hands shook as I printed everything. Emails, attachments, receipts. I didn't know what I was going to do with them, but I knew this. It wasn't about love anymore. It was about exposure. I packed the papers into a folder, shoved it in my bag, and stormed out into the night. But as soon as I reached my car, I froze. Someone was watching me, across the street, under a flickering streetlight, a silhouette. Tall. Still. I couldn't see the face, but I knew they were looking right at me. My heart kicked into overdrive. I got into my car, locked the doors, and sped off. When I got home, there was a new message waiting. No name. No number. You weren't supposed to find that. My breath caught. It wasn't Maya, it wasn't him. It was someone else. The next morning, I tried to call my boss, straight to voicemail. Maya's account? Deactivated. His number? Disconnected. It felt like everyone had vanished overnight, like I'd pulled a thread that unraveled the entire fabric of their world. And mine. I sat there, staring at the folder on my kitchen table. Part of me wanted to burn it. Part of me wanted to take it straight to the press. But mostly, I wanted to know why, because this wasn't just betrayal anymore. This was something deeper, bigger. And if I was right, if what I'd stumbled into was more than just a love triangle, then my revenge story had just become something far more dangerous. I didn't sleep that night. The city outside kept breathing, restless, neon lights flickering through my blinds like a heartbeat I couldn't escape. On my kitchen table, the folder of evidence sat there, quiet, heavy, and alive. Every time I looked at it, I felt that old ache twist inside me. Not the ache of loss, the ache of knowing there was still something I didn't understand. By sunrise, I made my decision. I needed answers, and there was only one person left who could give them to me. Maya. I tracked her down through a mutual contact, an old stylist who still owed me a favor. She didn't want to talk at first, but when I said, "It's about him," her voice cracked. She agreed to meet. We chose a quiet cafe at the edge of the city, the kind of place where the walls smelled of burnt espresso and old secrets. When I walked in, she was already there, smaller than I remembered, her perfect hair tied up carelessly, her eyes rimmed in sleepless red. For a long moment, neither of us spoke. It felt like standing at the edge of a grave, both of us mourning something that had died between us long before we'd buried it. Finally, I said it. "I know." Her eyes lifted slowly. "Know what?" I slid the folder across the table. "About him. About you. About all of it." She stared at the papers like they were poison. Then her voice trembled. "You weren't supposed to find those?" I leaned back. "Then maybe you shouldn't have used my life as a campaign pitch." Her hand shook. "You don't understand." "Then make me." For a moment, she didn't move. Then, almost like her strength had given out, she exhaled and started talking. And with every word, the story I thought I knew shattered. Turns out, the man I'd once loved wasn't just cruel. He was calculated. He'd been working with my boss all along, running PR schemes through fake relationships to gain publicity for their clients. Maya had been one of those clients. "It started as a deal," she whispered. "They said if I could help him look good after your breakup, they'd boost my brand. I didn't know it was you until it was too late." My throat tightened. "You still went through with it." Tears welled in her eyes. "He said he'd ruin me if I didn't." I wanted to believe her. I didn't want to believe her. Both feelings tore at me. "So all of it," I said slowly. "The betrayal, the humiliation?" She nodded. "Staged. Every photo, every story, every fight. Except one thing," I frowned. "What?" Her voice broke. "I did fall in love with him, and I hated myself for it." Something inside me cracked open. Not rage this time. Not grief. Something quieter. Recognition, because I saw it then. The same shadow I'd been carrying reflected in her eyes. We'd both been manipulated, used, played against each other until we couldn't tell where the lies ended and our pain began. I wanted to scream. To hit her. To hug her. I didn't do any of those things. I just sat there, staring at her, feeling every part of the old me crumble away. "So where is he now?" I asked finally. She swallowed hard. "Gone. The company covered for him. Said he was moving to Europe. But I think..." She hesitated. "I think he's still here. And I think he's watching both of us." That word, watching, hung in the air like a curse. My mind flashed to the silhouette outside the office. The message on my phone. The way my boss vanished overnight, a chill ran through me. "Why tell me now?" I asked. She looked up, tears streaking down her face. Because I can't sleep. Because every time I close my eyes, I see what he did to you. And I know I helped him do it. There was a long silence. Outside, rain began to fall again, soft and slow, tapping against the glass like it was listening. Finally, I whispered, "I don't forgive you." She nodded. "I don't expect you to." But as I stood to leave, she grabbed my hand. Her grip was cold, desperate. "Be careful," she said. "He doesn't let go of people easily." I walked out without looking back. But her words clung to me, heavy and sticky. When I got home, there was another message waiting. No name. No number. Told you she'd break first. My blood froze. I stared at the screen until the words blurred. Because it meant one thing. He'd been watching both of us the whole time. And maybe my story of revenge wasn't ending. Maybe it was only now beginning to turn on me. The message glowed on my phone like an open wound. Told you she'd break first. For a long time, I just sat there in silence. No tears, no panic. Just this cold, hollow stillness, the kind that settles in right before something explodes. He was still out there, still pulling strings, still watching, and suddenly I realized something awful. All my revenge, all my control, all my power. It had been happening inside a cage he built. Every move I'd made, he'd probably seen. Every post. Every reaction. Maybe even every tear. I thought I'd turned my pain into strength. But really, I'd just been performing inside his theater until now. That night, I drove back to the office. Not the one I used to work in, the one he ran his operations from. It was late. The building was empty, the air heavy with that strange electric silence that only happens when something's about to change. I still had my old key card. When the light turned green, I stepped inside. The hallway smelled like dust and expensive lies. And then I saw him, sitting at his desk, calm, composed, like he'd been expecting me. "Hey, stranger," he said with that same smooth voice that used to make my heart skip. Now it just made my stomach turn. "You don't look surprised," I said. "I'm not," he replied. "I always knew you'd come back." "You're predictable that way," I laughed. Sharp, hollow. Predictable? No, just done. He leaned back in his chair, smiling like he was watching a play he'd already seen the ending of. "I heard you've been busy. Rebranding yourself. Impressive, really. Almost admirable." "You ruined people's lives," I said. "Mine. Maya's." He tilted his head. "Ruined or reshaped?" Then he leaned forward, eyes gleaming. "Tell me, did you hate what I did? Or did you love who it made you become?" For a second, I couldn't breathe. Because that was the twisted thing. Part of me had loved it. The strength, the power, the attention. But it wasn't his gift. It was what I clawed out of the ashes he left me in, so I looked him dead in the eye. "I became everything you feared, not because of you." "In spite of you?" His smirk faltered, just for a flicker. That was all I needed. I pulled the folder from my bag, the one full of every email, every receipt, every secret he'd tried to bury. And I dropped it on the desk. "You built your empire on people's pain," I said. "And I'm done being your muse." He leaned back, feigning calm. "What do you plan to do? Ruin me?" "You think anyone will believe you?" I smiled. "I don't need them to believe me. I just need the truth out there." He laughed, but it wasn't confident anymore. It was shaky. "Then you'll go down with me." "Maybe," I said softly. "But at least I'll go down as me." I turned to leave, my pulse hammering, the sound of my heels echoing through the marble floor. Behind me, I heard him call out, his voice sharp, desperate. "You think this makes you free?" I stopped at the door, glanced over my shoulder. "No," I said. "I made myself free the moment I stopped needing you to lose." And I walked away. The next morning, his company's emails were everywhere, leaked anonymously. The story exploded. He vanished. Maya disappeared into silence, somewhere far away trying to rebuild her life. And me? I didn't feel triumphant. Not exactly. It wasn't the sweet satisfaction the movies promise you. It was quieter, like exhaling after years of holding your breath. I moved apartments, changed my number, started therapy, Sometimes I'd catch glimpses of my old self in reflections, soft, naive, hopeful. But she didn't haunt me anymore. She'd forgiven me for surviving, and every now and then I'd think about him. Not with love, not even with hate. Just with the strange detachment you feel when you finally step out of someone else's story. Because I'd written a new one. One where I wasn't the victim or the villain or the vengeful ghost. Just someone who learned how to begin again. And if you're listening to this, if someone ever tried to break you and you thought you'd never recover, remember this. You don't need to destroy them to heal. You just need to stop letting their hands hold your reflection. So tell me, if you were in my place, if someone betrayed you, used you, turned your pain into their power, would you have burned them down too? Or would you have walked away sooner? Tell me in the comments. I really want to know,